Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy Kenny, and this is Unsung Hollywood Season 3, and this episode is about Tupac Shakur. Man, I'm so happy they finally did an episode on him because Tupac definitely is unsung as far as an actor, and it's not because of his talent, it's because he left us too soon. I mean, he had, 6 major roles, and those roles are still embedded with us to this day. I mean, and I have to say, what one person that did commentary on this episode said that he pretty much like the Black James Dean. I have to go on and say I agree with that because he was that great star that has so much potential, but he left us too soon. And I'm definitely gonna talk about this episode. But before I do, let me send out my love and condolences to everyone that was affected by the tragedy in Las Vegas, as well as everyone that is still being affected by the hurricanes Harvey, Irma, Jose, and Maria. If you can give any kind of relief or any kind of support, please do so because our fellow man needs our help and we should definitely be there for one another. And if you can give relief, please do so. Now, I have to say this was a great episode because it really showcased, his great acting ability and how he saw acting as his vehicle and that really acting was his first love. And this episode really showcased how much he loved being an actor and how much he took acting seriously. So, and the funny thing about it is that he's one of the greatest rappers of all time, but he definitely was an actor first and was a rapper second. So it was great because in this episode they talked about his passion, his natural charisma. He had just a natural presence, on stage and on film, and it was just a real beautiful episode where it really just showed his artistic side and how much of a not only a student but even pretty much a pioneer, in his world of acting because, he was that rapper that definitely had that ability to be a mainstream, superstar, and he proved it, more times than one. So, pretty much they talk about, him being born in 1971 in Harlem. His mother, Tupac Shakur, being a Black Panther and who was being prosecuted by the local authorities, and she was put in prison, and she actually had Pac, she was pregnant while she was in prison, but she pretty much gave birth to him after she got out of jail. And I think his name, Tupac, actually came from a Peruvian warrior. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. That's what they're there for. I definitely want to hear you guys' feedback on this video. And she also talks about her marrying Mutulu Shakur, who pretty much becomes a father figure to Tupac. But he gets caught up in this whole robbery of this brink truck, which he was sentenced to 60 years. So that father role that he had in the household pretty much was gone. But he pretty much grew up in utter poverty, and he even talks about where he first got the bug, or the acting bug as they call it, is that he would watch TV shows, and he would see like these TV shows where there were families, and he said that maybe if I act like them, then maybe I can have some of the joy that they're showing on screen. So acting was a form of escapism, and definitely it became a vehicle that he was going to use to change his life. And they actually said like his first role was as the role of Travis Younger in A Raisin in the Sun at the Apollo Theater. So I was like, wow, that's amazing because that is a legendary play. As far as like Black playwrights, and as far as the Harlem Renaissance. I mean, A Raisin in the Sun is definitely one of the pillars of our community. And it's pretty much a story that is even being told now. And the funny thing about it, that was like his first role, playing the role of Travis, is awesome. And in '84, you know, his mother moved, you know, from New York to Baltimore, and you know, pretty much he was surrounded. You know, pretty much it was a war zone back then. I mean, it was during the crack epidemic, so you know, drugs was everywhere. There was a lot of murders, a lot of rivalry with neighborhoods, and Baltimore was just crazy around that early '80s time. And you know, here in DC was pretty much the same thing. And he pretty much said that, you know, he was known as the little boy that rapped, so drug dealers pretty much looked out for him and made sure he stayed out of trouble. And in his sophomore year in high school, he auditioned for the Baltimore School of the Arts, and pretty much he, you know, was taking, you know, ballet. He learned Shakespeare, and he said that his real goal was to be a Shakespearean actor, because you have to be a great in order to do Shakespeare. And for someone who studies Shakespeare, he's absolutely right. I mean, studying Shakespeare is like real strenuous work, but I definitely live for it. I mean, when you get the meander pentameter down and you really start getting into the character, you can bring out certain things in yourself that you didn't even know that were there. So I definitely had that experience working with Shakespeare. And it was also at the Baltimore School of the Arts that he met Jada Pinkett. And, you know, they pretty much became lifelong friends. And, you know, it was also, it was a little, and then like, then, you know, I think it was, you know, his mom decided to move again because his mother had you know, she pretty much had her battle with a crack addiction, and, you know, she uprooted the family from Baltimore to Marine City, California. And his teacher, you know, one of his teachers that he had at Baltimore School of the Arts, you know, he was even going to set up like a living situation for him so he can stay and finish school, because people loved him at the school because he was such he was just such a natural talent, and everyone gravitated towards him. And you know, Pac didn't want to leave his mom, so Pac went to Marine City, but the teacher said he cried, you know, because it was the one place where he was able to come alive, and he actually got exposed, you know, to some of the greats like Odette and Shakespeare, Machiavelli, and you know, Shelley, and so many great, you know, Arthur Miller. I mean, he pretty much was around this environment where he had all of this great, you know, classic literature and classic work that he probably wouldn't have gotten at a public school. So, you know, this definitely paid off, you know, because we actually see some of those great elements that he learned in Baltimore School of the Arts. We actually saw those in his films. So pretty much, after he got into after he moved to Marine City, California, he pretty much ended up dropping out of school, and you know, he pretty much, you know, he tried selling drugs, but he pretty much couldn't do it because he said that, you know, when he looked at him selling drugs reminded him of his mom, and that, you know, this stuff has killed my mother. How can I go out here and kill my community doing the same thing? So it really just shows how much of a deep, you know, ontological thinker Pac was, and how he saw, you know, his community and how he saw life. They also talk about him getting with Digital Underground, and when they actually brought him on, he was kind of like, you know, kind of like one of their roadies. You know, he would kind of help build the stage and help tear it down and, you know, load the equipment. But then he would also be kind of a part of the show where he would be, you know, one of the dancers, you know, as well. And I'm glad that they mentioned this movie. 1991's Nothing But Trouble. It's a movie with Chevy Chase, Demi Moore, and Dan Aykroyd. Digital Underground had like a cameo appearance, you know, in the movie, and definitely I remember Pac, because Pac got a lot of camera time in that cameo scene because he was so charismatic, and you just really saw him come to life. And you know, it was great because they really focused a lot on Pac in that scene, you know, and it was just awesome, you know, to see him in his, you know, first movie appearance, but it was definitely memorable because I actually had that movie when I was growing up, and me and my brother used to always get hyped every time Pac came on. And we was like, "Oh shit, they go Pac!" I mean, it was definitely that kind of movie, and we definitely remember the scene when, you know, Digital Underground gets stopped and they're brought to court and they perform, you know, the all around the world, same song. Yes, classic. They also talk about in 1991 where he got the role of Juice. Now this, I am not going to lie to y'all, this is what made me a diehard Pac fan, seeing him in the role of Juice. I think when I first saw this movie, I believe I was 11 or 12, and of course, you know, my mom screened it before I was able to watch it, but, you know, even though it had a lot of profanity and all of that in it, she pretty much said it was a movie that I needed to watch, and she definitely, you know, told me that it's definitely a good movie, and, you know, we actually watched it, and I was immediately drawn. I mean, and you had some great actors in this movie. I mean, Omar Epps, Jermaine Hopkins, Khalil Khan, and, you know, you had Tupac, but Tupac stood out, and he stood out for so many reasons. One, he was playing a character that was like a shell within himself. Like I mean, for those who watched the movie, we know that his father was mentally ill. He was pretty much being raised by his grandmother. He pretty much, you know, was pretty much like a shell, like a shallow guy, and the only thing that gave him joy or gave him excitement was hanging out with his boys and also watching gangster movies. So his whole idea is that he wanted power because he felt powerless in his life. You know, he was constantly being harassed by, you know, the Puerto Rican gangs and stuff like that. So he was pretty much like a target, and everybody just saw him as a clown. And, you know, his friends loved him, but for some odd reason, you know, Bishop wasn't able to love himself. He wanted power and he wanted respect, and he thought the only way he can get it was through violence. So we literally see this character who has these close-knit family of boys, you know, like his friends, like his brothers, and he literally turns into this antagonist and literally, you know, kills one of them, assaults the other one, and damn near killed the other one, you know, Omar Epps' character. You know, and this was a great film because it really showed his range as an actor. I mean, it literally blew you away because at one point you was cool with Bishop, and then the next thing you noticed, you just saw that Bishop was a sick motherfucker, especially that locker scene where he shut the locker and Pac is right there. You can't get that. You know, that is just a natural ability. I mean, just him standing there literally made your heart sink like, yo, this motherfucker has turned into a fucking psychopath. And he just let that crazy come out, especially in that scene when he was talking to, you know, Q, who was played by Omar Epps. You know, that whole dynamic was just crazy. And it really just shows how much of a talented actor, you know, Tupac was, and that pretty much was like the smoking gun for him. They also had Money B, who was also doing commentary. He said that Money B was the one who was really up for the role of Bishop, but he said he chickened out. But he said when Pac went in there, they were clapping and hollering, and he got the part just like that. You know, he was just meant for it. And let's see. Oh yeah, I talked about that. So pretty much, you know, so pretty much, you know, he would. I'm sorry, apologize. Juice was a hit, and Tupac was the breakout star out of that movie, and his career began to really, you know, it began to really propel after that. It flourished after that. And, you know, one person who commented was like Guy Torry, as well as Joe Torry, who actually appeared in the second movie he did, Poetic Justice, along with Janet Jackson. And I have to say, that's definitely one of my favorite movies of all time. I know that movie by heart. I mean, me and my cousins and even friends, you know, we can like quote that movie from beginning to end because we watched it so many times. And it's just one of those classics and it was great because we actually got to see Pac in a different kind of role. he wasn't playing a thug. He was playing a regular guy who was living in South Central, who is, you know, trying to, you know, further his horizons, and also trying to find love, and also trying to be a father, you know, be a single father to his daughter. I mean, and this was a different stretch, and he wanted this role because he felt that people were kind of typecasting him to kind of play thug roles, and he said that, no, I'm an actor. You know, I can play different ranges of different kind of black men. So the role of Lucky was a post worker who pretty much, you know, definitely, you know, instantly has, you know, interest in the role of, in this girl Justice, who's played by Janet Jackson. And the movie takes place of them, you know, taking a trip from South Central to Oakland, and, you know, all the craziness that goes from you know, from point A to point B. But it was a really good film, and it really showcased him in a different light. And, you know, the funny thing about it is that it looked as if, you know, Tupac and Janet had great chemistry. They did get along, but they were like from totally two different worlds. And, you know, the thing about it, what really got him the role was that when they did the screen test, it was in the beauty salon, and he was in the scene with Janet Jackson. He literally did not break character. He did not go crazy that he was in the room with Janet, because it was the first time that they met each other, and they just put him in the scene with her, and he held his own. But they said when he got in the car, he was screaming and everything, like, oh my God, I was just right in front of Janet Jackson, what the fuck? So I was just like, wow, that's cool. But then it was also some controversy on that movie, you know, where supposedly, you know, they pretty much said that they wanted Tupac to take an AIDS test because he had a kissing scene with Janet, and the reason is because she got like a cold when she had kissed Q-Tip, and, you know, in the beginning scene of the movie. So it was like, yo, that was fucking crazy. And Pac was like adamant, like, I'm not taking no test. He said, now if I'm having sex with Janet, then maybe, but kissing, hell no, I'm not doing that, and I'm not going out like that. But, you know, the thing about it, it really, you know, it was crazy because, you know, she had her people, and they didn't hang out outside of the set. They only came and they did their job. They got along well on the set, but there really was no chemistry because they only knew each other based on their work. They didn't get to know each other personally. So that's pretty much what happened there. But yeah, they definitely talk about this, and John Singleton pretty much, you know, saw him out for that role, because he said that, you know, he knew, you know, the range of Tupac's talent. He knew that he could pull the role of Lucky, and he did. And this was great because, you know, this was a movie that even had more mainstream appeal, and, you know, it was definitely a hit at the box office, and it actually made Tupac more mainstream as far as Hollywood. And, you know, they also had Joe Torre, who played the role of Chicago. He was doing commentary on this episode as well. And let's see. So yeah, and the movie hit #1, and it actually, you know, grossed $11 million in its first week. So that was very impressive. And then also his second album, you know, definitely, you know, Strictly for My Niggas, actually, that was also a big hit as well. So he had a platinum album as well as a #1 movie at the box office. So that was awesome. And I remember my mother, it was a while before my mother let me and my brother watch the movie, but eventually we saw it, and we, you know, are big fans of that movie to this day. And another thing that they also talked about too is that, you know, one of his favorite things was to imitate Tony Montana from Scarface, and that was like his favorite role. And like Money Dude said, he used to drive us crazy and get on our nerves with it. But he said that he would even talk like that all day and would not break character. Like he was that much of a dedicated actor that he was constantly working on his craft, and he was always, you know, just diving into the role. And once he dived into the role, he became that role. And they even talked about, he was supposed to get the part in Menace to Society as the role of Sharif, the Muslim, who pretty much is also a gangbanger, and he was like, that don't even make no sense. A Muslim, and he's also in a gang? Like, what kind of crap is that? So, pretty much, what ended up happening is that the Hughes brothers recast him, and then months later they got into this big physical brawl, which definitely, gave them bad headlines and all of that. And it was crazy because the two of them, the two parties could have actually done some great things together, because we definitely know the Hughes brothers definitely did some big things in Hollywood at that time. And Menace to Society was a very big hit. I mean, that's definitely one of my favorite movies of all time as well. And to see Tupac in that movie, it would have made it even greater, honestly. And they also talk about, his guest appearance on A Different World, and he got to work with his friends, Jada Pinkett Smith, as well as Jasmine Guy, who's also was a close friend of his. And, and I definitely loved his role, loved his character, and you could just tell him and Jada just had natural chemistry on set. And he actually played like her old boyfriend from back in Baltimore, and just his charisma as that character was just everything, and he was just like a big draw. Like I definitely loved the episode that he was in, and it was great because it really just showed his versatility as an actor, and it was cool seeing him on the show too, because I was a very big Different World fan. Even to this day, I mean, I'm waiting for it to come back on Netflix, because I just loved watching it as a marathon back to back. I was getting my life, but not to get too much off subject. Even Lance Gross said that Tupac inspired him to be an actor because he saw him on A Different World, and he said that I want to be like that guy. I want to be able to do what he's doing. I want to be able to be a good actor like him. And look where Lance Gross is today. So that just shows you right there, man. When you perform great things, you never know who you're going to inspire and whose life you're going to change. They even also talked about, some of his legal troubles and how that began to get in the way of, of his career in Hollywood. And, it also kind of pretty much derailed his music career as well, especially after him being convicted for the sexual assault situation where he was, sentenced to 1.5 years to 4.5 years in prison, which I thought was very ludicrous and crazy. They even also talked about his role in Above the Rim, where he played Birdie. I love that role, and also Dwayne Martin and Leon both did commentary on this episode about that. That definitely was another favorite movie of mine of his, and seeing him play the bad guy was just crazy because we see that he had that damn scar on the side of his face. He literally became that character. And it was like, even though I knew it was Pac, I saw something different with that character. Like, he brought a certain element, to the role of Bishop that I'd never seen before in any other role he did. And because, Bishop was just grimy. He was gritty, but at the end of the day, he was human because he had this relationship with his older brother. And it was a very, somewhat, distant and turbulent relationship. But we actually saw at one point Bishop had a heart. Not Bishop, I'm sorry. We actually saw at one point Birdie had a heart. But Birdie got caught up in the madness around him and became pretty much the one thing that his brother wished he never did, which was a drug dealer. And pretty much kind of like a kingpin. And, he pretty much walked around with a razor in his mouth and was just slicing niggas up. And that was definitely a good role too, and that was also a hit movie. I think it cost $7 million to make it and grossed $16 million, so it was a hit. And definitely it also further showcased more of Tupac's talent. Then they also talked about the other 3 movies that he did that actually came out which actually came out posthumously after he had passed away. Forgive me. And those movies were Bullet, Gridlock, and Gang Related. 3 great films. I've seen all 3 of them, and I can just say that it was just crazy because it's like you really just saw the great talent of Tupac and I can pretty much say if he was still alive today, I mean, he definitely would have been nominated for an Oscar or probably would have had an Oscar by now. So I agree when Ice Cube said that, because Ice Cube was another one who did commentary on this episode as well. And then, you know, definitely would have been ranking up some NAACP Image Awards, because the man was just, you know, he pretty much was just all around, you know, one of the greatest talents that we've had in, you know, in over the past 30 years. And, you know, definitely I put him up there with like a James Dean, you know, a star that would have been, you know, been pretty much like a megastar, you know. And Pac was a megastar in music as well as movies, but he would have been even a greater star if he would have been able to live longer and actually would have been able to take on his journey, because I come to find, we also learned in this episode that he was actually up for the role of Jody and Baby Boy. You know, that was a role that was actually written for him. And, you know, there was also, he also had ideas of playing Nat Turner. You know, so he really had a lot, you know, that he was going to get into, and he was just a workaholic, because he pretty much said that, look, I have to work because there's a lot I want to say, and I don't know if I'll live long enough to say everything I want to say. So he was always a workaholic. Even when he did movies, he was always in the studio working. I mean, this is an artist that I respect, an artist I look up to, an artist that's inspired me to be the best that I can be and not to let anything stop me. You know, so Pac is definitely a revolutionary, and he's definitely, you know, one of those pioneers that we need to look into to see how we can be better as men and better as a people. So that's what I have, y'all. If I missed anything, put it down in the comments. Or if you have comments on this episode, please feel free to put your comments on this video. But be respectful, because if you get out of line, I won't accept that. So I'm letting you know right now. So if you come with respect, I'm all ears. Even if you disagree, just do it respectfully. I'm all ears to you. But subscribe to my channel. Click that bell so you can get notifications every time I drop a video. Also, I've started a GoFundMe. You can find that link in the description box. Also, like this video, comment on this video, and share this video. And I will be back with the next episode of Unsung Hollywood. So until then, everybody, take care.